What would you do if the man you loved called you crazy on camera just to cover the bruises he left behind your smile? I was wearing my favorite navy blue gown. I had spent the last few hours placing wine glasses on the polished wood tray, arranging shrimp skewers into perfect spirals, and forcing a smile for the 60-plus people crowding our living room. Some I knew. Most I didn't. The promotion party wasn't my idea. I didn't even know it was happening until 2 days before. But Marcus said, "It's not a big deal, just friends, co-workers." Of course, by friends, he meant anyone who boosted his ego. I walked around barefoot, heels in my hand, trying not to trip on the rug again. The last thing I wanted was to look clumsy, especially not in front of the new receptionist from his office, the one with the too tight dress and the too familiar laugh. The music was loud. The lights were warm, and I felt like a stranger in my own home. Then it happened. I passed Marcus a fresh drink. His friend, some guy in a linen suit and fake designer loafers, chuckled and said, "Your wife still does this traditional hostess thing? Cute." Marcus didn't laugh right away. He swirled his champagne flute, gave me a once-over and then smirked. "She's from a different world," he said, loud enough for the room. "But she's learning her place." That one sentence, it cracked something deep inside me. I turned, heels still in hand, ready to leave the room. But fate had other plans. The edge of the rug caught my bare toes. I stumbled. Reflexively, I reached out toward him. Not for help, just to catch my balance. And that's when Marcus pushed me. With intention, with force. With a smile, I fell hard. My hands scraped the floor. The tray flew out of my grip, crashing into the marble. Glass shattered. Laughter died. And for a few full seconds the room was silent. I looked up. Everyone was staring, some with pity, some with horror. And some, God help me, with amusement. Marcus towered over me, sipping champagne like nothing had happened. "She talks too much," he muttered. "Now you'll see what I deal with every day." A few people laughed. Not many, but enough. That was the moment. The exact moment something inside me snapped clean. It wasn't just the fall. It was the realization. I had become a prop in my own marriage, decorative, disposable, replaceable. Marcus didn't flinch when I stood up. Didn't reach out a hand. Didn't say sorry. I walked to the stairs, every step echoing the humiliation clinging to my skin. Upstairs, I locked the bathroom door and slid down against the tile wall. I didn't cry right away. I stared at my hands, at the tiny cut on my knuckle. And then I let the silence hold me. That's when it hit me. This man, Marcus Whitmore, the man I once loved, the man I built a business with, shared my bed with, laughed with. He wasn't just cruel. He was calculated. He had waited until there were enough witnesses, until the spotlight was perfectly aimed, and then he humiliated me to establish dominance. Now you all see what I deal with every day. That wasn't a comment. It was a performance. And I was done being his stage. I didn't sleep that night, didn't eat. Didn't scream. But I did open the drawer. The one with the documents, the startup registration, the bank account co-ownership, the deed to this house. Power of attorney. The company name tied to my mother's trust fund. Page after page, I read. And the more I read, the more a cold smile formed on my lips. You see, Marcus had been walking around like he owned everything. But he didn't. He was standing on ground that I built. The next morning, he waltzed into the kitchen like nothing happened, tossed his keys on the counter, looked at me like I was furniture. "You embarrassed me," he muttered while scrolling his phone, "in front of my friends." I didn't respond right away. Then I turned to him and said quietly, "I embarrassed you?" He looked up. "Yeah. Don't start with your drama. You tripped. It's not my fault." Learn to walk in heels. I took a deep breath and whispered, "Marcus, you haven't seen anything yet. He chuckled. What are you going to do? Cry to your lawyer? You can't do anything. You're just the wife. I smiled. No, I'm the owner. He froze for a split second barely, then shrugged. Keep dreaming. And walked away. But that was the last time Marcus Whitmore would walk away from me with power, because I wasn't just going to stand up. I was going to rise. And he was about to learn what it felt like to lose everything while thinking he still had control. Before the champagne, before the fall, before the humiliation in front of 60 people. There was a bookstore. That's where I met Marcus. Not the man who would later mock me in front of his friends, but the version of him I once believed in. The one who sat cross-legged between dusty shelves in a second-hand bookstore in East Atlanta, flipping through business books he couldn't afford, scribbling in a beat-up leather notebook with no name. He looked up and smiled. You ever read The Lean Startup? I hadn't, but I nodded anyway. We talked for hours that day. About dreams, about hustle, about how hard it was to find your place in a world that judged your ambition by the size of your wallet. I was managing my late aunt's food delivery startup at the time. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and taught me everything I knew about operations, budgeting, and grit. He had charm and struggle. And that fire in his eyes that made me think maybe I've found someone who gets it. We dated for 6 months. Fast, passionate, electric. He said I was the most focused woman he'd ever met. I said he was the most driven man I'd ever loved. We didn't see it then, but we weren't two equals climbing together. I was already halfway up the ladder, and he was using me to get his first rung. It started with, can I borrow your laptop? Then, can you co-sign for this small loan? Then, your aunt left you that trust fund, right? Maybe we could launch a platform. And I said yes, because I believed in him. Because I thought that's what love was. I invested N5 million money I inherited when my mother passed away. That startup, the one with the sleek logo, the social media buzz, the initial funding boost, that was mine. But Marcus was the one pitching at conferences, shaking hands, flashing that same smile I first saw in the bookstore. In the early days, he gave me credit. My wife is the backbone, he'd say. But slowly, that changed. He started making decisions without me. Changing passwords. Hosting meetings I wasn't invited to. Hiring new faces, mostly women who called him boss, with voices too sweet and eyes too sharp. One night I asked, why didn't you tell me you signed a new vendor contract? He didn't even look up from his phone. You're too emotional about money stuff. I'll handle it. Another night, I smelled a strange perfume on his shirt. He rolled his eyes. You're insecure. You never used to be like this. And so I shrank. I shrank so he could shine. I told myself this was just a phase, that once the business stabilized, he'd come back to the version of himself I knew. But that version was a costume. A mask he wore just long enough to get what he needed. The man I married was a ghost. We stopped sleeping in the same room. He said it was because of his late-night thinking. I found lipstick on his collar and long strands of auburn hair in our sheets. My hair is black. Always has been. I asked once, whose hair is this? His answer? I should be asking you that. You've been acting strange lately. Gaslighting 101, and I fell for it again. Eventually, he took the business finances from me altogether. You just focus on being my queen, he said. That word Queen used to make me feel proud. Now it made me feel like a prisoner in a gilded cage. I wasn't allowed near the books. I wasn't copied on emails. But I was still expected to cook, smile at guests, iron his shirts for weekend brunches with clients I'd never met. And then came the party. He invited over 60 people to our home. Investors, employees, friends, and me. I was told to look presentable, smile, and pass out drinks like a server. That's the night he pushed me. That's the night something inside me cracked and whispered, "Wake up." In the quiet of that night, after the music faded and the guests went home, I sat in our closet and remembered. I registered the company. I built the first website. I designed the logo. I pitched the first grant proposal. I ran operations when he couldn't even manage a spreadsheet. And somewhere along the way, he convinced me that it was his dream, that I was just lucky to be beside him. But the truth, I wasn't beside him. I was ahead of him, and he resented that. So he diminished me. Not in one blow, but in 1,000 small cuts, until I couldn't recognize myself. But now I remembered. Every email, every receipt, every late night I worked while he partied. I wasn't going to confront him with yelling. I wasn't going to throw things or post on social media. I was going to take back what was mine. And the best part? He had no idea that the power he thought he stole was never his to begin with. When you've been humiliated in public, mocked in your own home, and erased from a company you built, you don't always scream. Sometimes you sharpen your silence. That night after the party, the night he kicked me and laughed while others watched, I didn't pack a bag. I didn't cry into my pillow. I didn't call a friend to vent. Instead, I opened the old storage trunk under our bed. It still smelled like lavender and dust. Inside, carefully sealed in plastic folders, were the receipts of a life he thought I forgot. The original business registration, the C of O for the house, my mother's trust papers, our joint account application, the notarized contract giving me 70% equity because of my initial funding. My fingers trembled as I flipped through the documents. Not from fear, from clarity. He had built his ego on my paperwork. He thought that because I stopped fighting, I had forgotten how to win. He thought silence meant surrender. But I wasn't quiet because I was weak. I was quiet because I was planning. The next morning, Marcus walked in like a king returning from battle. Still drunk on power, he dropped his wallet on the kitchen counter and asked, "You gonna clean up the mess from last night?" I said nothing. "I don't have time for drama today," he muttered. "I've got 2 investor calls and a pitch deck to finish. Try not to make noise while I work." I smiled. Not wide, just enough. He didn't know it yet, but this would be the last time he gave me an order in this house. 9:07 a.m. I called the bank. "Good morning," the manager greeted. "I need to freeze all withdrawals on accounts ending in 1243 and 6781, I said. "May I ask your relation to the accounts?" "I'm the co-owner and trustee on the business account," I said. "And the house loan account is under my name. You'll find supporting documents on file." A pause. Then, "Yes, ma'am. Your authority checks out. Would you like us to revoke the secondary signatory?" "Effective immediately." Marcus wouldn't find out until 12:46 p.m. At a gas station when his card declined 3 times and the cashier gave him that, "Are you broke?" look. 10:13 a.m. I called the security company. "Hi, I'd like to reset the gate code, front door smart lock, and garage remote access. Do you have primary authorization?" "Yes," I replied, attaching the deed of property and security contract signed by me. By noon, all digital access tied to Marcus's phone was gone. The house, our house now, recognized only one owner. Me. 12:32 p.m. I called the utilities office. "Ma'am, looks like your husband's name is listed as the payer on file?" "Yes, and he's no longer authorized." By mid-afternoon, unpaid notices were sent to Marcus's email for power, water, and internet because he'd been pulling funds from the business account, not knowing it was now out of his reach. 2:00 p.m. I called the locksmith. "Make sure the lock is high security," I told him. "And I want a backup key delivered to my attorney." "Yes, ma'am. We'll have it done before sundown." By 6:17 p.m., the final piece was in place. New locks, new access codes.
New firewall settings on our home network. Marcus walked in that evening as usual, kicked off his shoes, tossed his blazer onto my armchair, and asked what was for dinner. I looked him in the eye and said, "There's leftover silence in the fridge. Heat it up yourself." He blinked. "Don't start with your attitude again." But I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue. I simply walked past him, calm, collected, unbothered. Because when a woman truly decides to walk away, she doesn't stomp, she glides. Later that night, while Marcus snored in the guest room after another round of team drinks, I stood by the window and watched the streetlights flicker. I thought about all the times I cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't see me break. All the times I said, "I'm fine," with a fake smile, while he made me feel invisible. And now I wasn't invisible. I was invincible. The next morning, he left for work like everything was normal. He had a pitch meeting at 10 a.m., but at 9:43 a.m., the boardroom projector froze mid-presentation. His laptop locked him out. His access to company files had been revoked. He called me 5 times before noon. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "What the hell did you do? You're insane. You can't lock me out of my company. We need to talk. Now." But I didn't reply. Because when men like Marcus say, "We need to talk," what they really mean is, "I need to control the narrative again." And I wasn't giving him the microphone. That evening he came home and couldn't get in. The gate didn't open. His fingerprint didn't register. The door didn't respond. He stood outside, pacing like a lion in a cage, pounding the intercom like it owed him answers. "AVA, open this door!" But I didn't. I stood behind the curtain, tea in hand, watching him with a stillness he never expected from me. Because this wasn't rage. This was reset. Marcus Whitmore had always been a man of performance. He walked like people were watching, smiled like a politician, and spoke in sound bites designed for applause. He wasn't powerful. He was rehearsed. But the thing about performers is this. When the stage collapses, they don't know how to live without the spotlight. That Monday, Marcus showed up to his usual coffee shop, waltzed to the counter, and handed over his platinum card with his trademark grin. Declined. He tried again. Same result. "Try the black one," he told the barista, voice tight now. Declined. And as she handed back both cards with an awkward smile, something shifted in his eyes. He wasn't embarrassed yet. Just confused. That was the moment he realized. Something was wrong. Back at the office, his keycard didn't work. He banged it against the scanner. Once, twice, nothing. The receptionist buzzed him in, nervous. "Sorry, Mr. Whitmore. There's some system update with access privileges." That system update was me. I had logged into the security system that morning and revoked his badge authorization. By 10:12 a.m., Marcus was locked out of the company he said I was too emotional to manage. By 10:45, his laptop froze, permanently logged out of the cloud drive we both used to build the business. The only difference now, I had administrator status. He didn't. By noon, he was calling me. I didn't answer. He called again, and again. Then came the texts. "Ava, what's going on with the accounts? Did you mess with the business back end? I can't access anything. You're acting irrational. We need to talk like adults." It's always that line, "we need to talk like adults," that men use when they've run out of control. But I wasn't interested in adult conversations. I was interested in consequences. By 1 p.m., he drove home, or tried to. The gate didn't open. The keypad didn't respond. His app login? Disabled. He stood outside for 20 minutes, calling me every 3 minutes like an Uber passenger who'd missed his ride. But I wasn't answering, because I didn't owe him a damn explanation. He banged on the door like he still paid the bills. Like his name was on the deed. It wasn't. By 3 p.m., The company's head of HR received an instruction email from me, effective immediately. Marcus Whitmore's role was suspended pending internal review. His company card was frozen. All approvals now required my written consent. The HR manager, a sharp woman named Sharon, called to confirm. "Is this retaliation?" she asked gently. "No," I said. "It's restructuring." And the truth was, I wasn't acting from spite. I was acting from memory, because I remembered every late night I stayed up fixing his mistakes. Every time I rewrote his sloppy contracts, every lie he told to minimize me. I wasn't burning the house down. I was reclaiming it. That evening, he returned again. Still locked out, still confused. "Ava!" he screamed at the gate, fists clenched. "You're being childish!" "You think this makes you strong? You think freezing accounts makes you powerful? I made you." I stood behind the upstairs curtain, arms folded, eyes steady. And I smiled, because that's the thing about men like Marcus. They believe power is loud. But I had learned. Real power whispers. At 11:30 p.m., he sent a final voice note. "I don't know who you think you are right now, but this won't last. You're still my wife. You can't just erase me." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent one text to our bank manager, Grace. "Please confirm transfer of full withdrawal authority on the business account to my name only." 10 minutes later, she replied, "Confirmed." Marcus was officially locked out of the funds he thought were his. The same funds I had once trusted him to grow. The same account he had used to buy champagne for networking events that looked a lot like weekend getaways with women who weren't me. The next morning, Marcus showed up at the office without a meeting, without a keycard, and without a clue. He stormed into the lobby, yelling at reception, "I'm the founder! Call Ava now!" They didn't call me. Security escorted him out, and still he didn't understand. Still, he thought this was a misunderstanding. That I would come running to fix it. But I wasn't his fixer anymore. I was the storm he didn't prepare for. That night, I stood in the center of the living room, barefoot, lights dim, tea in hand, and breathed. There was no yelling, no keys tossed at my face. No perfume that wasn't mine lingering on his collar, just silence. And in that silence, I felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger, not sadness, power. I always believed justice had a sound, the slamming of a gavel, the banging of a prison door, the roar of a courtroom rising to its feet. But now I know justice sounds like papers sliding across a polished desk, like a signature drying in silence. And it began with 5 words. "You're just the wife, Ava." He said it the morning after I locked him out. Tired, irritated, voice dripping with condescension. I had just told him he no longer had access to the business account, and he chuckled. "You're just the wife. You can't do anything." I didn't respond. I didn't scream. Instead, I picked up my phone and called the one person who knew how to turn pain into paper, Grace Howard, my lawyer. Grace was calm, older, sharp like winter air in New York. She had once dismantled a Fortune 500 CEO in court, using a forgotten prenup and one calendar error. When she answered, she didn't say hello. She said, "You ready to stop bleeding quietly?" I took a breath. Yes. By that afternoon, we met in her office. Navy blue walls, mahogany shelves lined with framed degrees and legal tomes. I placed a folder on her desk, every document I had. The trust account from my late mother, the LLC registration with my name, our business partnership agreement, screenshots of Marcus using company money for personal entertainment, a copy of the marital contract he forgot he signed. She flipped through silently, nodding. Then she looked up and said, "Ava, you're not just his wife. You're his co-founder, financier, and the legal owner of almost everything he pretends is his." We didn't file anything that day, not yet. Grace believed in calculated slowness. She called it building the record. You want to destroy a man like Marcus? She said. You don't burn his house down. You make sure he signed the deed to you first. Then you call the fire department and tell them to stand down. So, we started documenting everything. Day 1. I revoked Marcus's signatory rights on all shared accounts. Day 2. We contacted our accountant and demanded a full audit of the past 18 months. Turns out, Marcus had been siphoning money into a shell account named after his college nickname. Subtle. Day 4. Grace drafted a temporary restraining order in case he became unpredictable. She had already seen too many cases where men like Marcus escalated when the mirror cracked. Day 6. We filed a formal motion to remove Marcus from all managerial control of the company, citing conflict of interest, financial mismanagement, and ethical misconduct. Marcus, meanwhile, was unraveling. He was still trying to call meetings he wasn't authorized to hold, still sending emails like he was in charge, still posting on LinkedIn about leadership and vision. He didn't know the board had been briefed, that all his access had been rerouted through me. He didn't know he was a guest in a company he thought he built. A week later, I called the property office. Hi, I'd like to update the deed records for our main residence. Ma'am, it's already in your name. Perfect. Please send me a digital certificate with today's timestamp. I emailed the documents straight to Grace. We have the house, the company, the funds. Next, we freeze his legal mobility, she replied. That night, I lay in bed, finally alone, reading through Marcus's old emails. The ones where he told clients I was only handling admin work. The ones where he signed off with CEO and founder, despite being neither. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because his arrogance was so predictable, it became pathetic. 3 days later, Marcus showed up at the company again. Not for work, he had no job left there, but to shout. He stood outside the front doors, yelling at security, demanding to be let in. I was in the upstairs conference room, watching through the tinted glass. He looked ridiculous, wrinkled shirt, sweaty forehead. Shouting like a boy who'd lost his toy. Security turned him away. He yelled something about how I stole everything. I smiled, because you can't steal what you built. That evening, we sent the first legal notice. A formal cease and desist letter from Grace's office, warning Marcus to refrain from approaching the office premises, contacting me directly, misrepresenting his role in the business to clients or vendors. We also attached an early draft of the divorce petition. No drama, no emotional letter, just black ink on white paper. And then, silence. For 3 days, Marcus didn't show up. Didn't call, didn't post. I assumed he was regrouping. Until Grace called. He hired a lawyer. Should I be worried? I asked. Only if you think lies win over documents. I didn't. There's something no manipulative man ever prepares for. When the women he lied to start comparing notes. It began with a message request on Instagram. Her profile was private. Her name was Jasmine Carter. Her first sentence read, "You don't know me, but I think we've both been lied to by the same man." I stared at the screen for a long time, not out of shock, but because deep down I had known this day would come. Marcus had been sloppy. Entitled men usually are. I replied with 3 words. Let's have coffee. We met the next day at a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the courthouse. She was younger than I expected. Early 30s. Smart eyes, nervous smile. She ordered chamomile tea, then pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. These are screenshots, texts from Marcus. He said you were separated, that you were unstable, controlling, that the business was failing because of you. I didn't flinch. I just nodded. Sounds familiar? She blinked. It does? I pulled up my phone and showed her old messages from Marcus, saying she was just a phase, that she meant nothing, that he needed to feel like a man again. Jasmine covered her mouth. She wasn't crying. She was connecting the dots, and then she whispered, "I thought I was the only one." "No, Jasmine, you weren't." 2 days later, I got another message. This time from Vanessa Blake, the receptionist from the party. The one who stood by Marcus's side when he kicked me in front of everyone. Her message was colder. "He told me you cheated first, that you stole his company, but now he's trying to move into my apartment because he says his accounts are frozen. I'm starting to think he lied." I replied with a meeting location, not to shame her, not to gloat, but because when women stop seeing each other as competition and start seeing each other as survivors, the story changes. The three of us met in my office, Jasmine, Vanessa, and me. No makeup, no pretense. Just truth. Vanessa brought a flash drive. He had me schedule his appointments. I still have access to some of his emails. You might want these. Jasmine had something even better, a voice recording. Marcus drunk at dinner bragging to a friend about how easy it is to milk emotional women. He laughed as he said it. Called us investments with feelings. Vanessa turned pale. Jasmine gritted her teeth. I simply pressed save. That night, I handed everything to Grace. "We're not just dealing with a toxic husband," I said. "We're dealing with a serial manipulator, a con artist." Grace's fingers flew across her keyboard. "This isn't just emotional abuse," she said. "This is financial fraud, patterned, documented. Let's build a case." Over the next week, we compiled WhatsApp messages showing Marcus promising business partnerships in exchange for affection, bank transfers to 3 different women from the company account, screenshots of him signing consulting contracts that were really cover-ups, a deleted Google Doc titled Exit Plan, where he outlined how to claim full ownership of the company once I was out of the picture. He had planned to erase me legally and socially, but now I had an army. One afternoon, as Jasmine and I waited outside the lawyer's office, she asked, "Why didn't you go public earlier?" I sipped my coffee. Because I wanted receipts, not revenge. And now that I have both, I want results. She smiled. Not the smile of someone who'd won, but the smile of someone who was finally seen. Vanessa, to her credit, apologized. More than once. I knew something felt wrong that night. When he pushed you, but I laughed anyway. I wanted to fit in. I looked at her. You don't need to apologize for surviving him. Just don't help him ever again. She nodded. Never. By Friday, Grace had drafted a civil complaint. We weren't just going after Marcus for divorce or business fraud. We were initiating an injunction against any future businesses registered under his name, citing misuse of investment funds, manipulation of female partners, and breach of fiduciary duty in a shared corporate entity. It was surgical, elegant, unforgiving, and just like that, the man who once thought he controlled every woman in his orbit was now being dismantled by their combined voices. The irony? He had built his entire image on being the visionary, the alpha, the builder. But the only thing he really built was a trail of women who were done being lied to. The morning of the hearing, I didn't wear black. I wore white, a sharp, tailored suit, the same one I wore the day I registered our company name at City Hall. I wanted to remind myself this wasn't the end of something. It was the return of my voice, return of my dignity, return of everything he tried to erase. The courthouse was cold, like most government buildings, fluorescent lights, beige walls, and a lingering scent of old coffee and anxiety. I sat with Grace Howard, my lawyer, on my right. Across the aisle, Marcus. He walked in wearing a navy suit that no longer looked expensive, just tight around the neck. He smirked at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was rattled. I could tell from the way he adjusted his collar every 30 seconds, the way he kept whispering to his attorney like the answers were going to magically appear in his briefcase. They weren't. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The judge entered. A woman. Older. Glasses low on her nose. Eyes sharp as a scalpel. Good. I needed someone who didn't blink. The case was called Ava Thompson versus Marcus Whitmore. Division of assets, business ownership dispute, and petition for full control under grounds of financial abuse. That was the first time Marcus flinched. Financial abuse. He hated that word. Because it sounded too real, too deliberate, too public. Grace stood first. Calm. Precise. She handed the judge a folder, a USB drive, and a notarized affidavit. "Your Honor," she began, "we will show that Ms. Thompson not only co-founded the business in question, but solely financed its early operations through a personal trust account tied to her late mother's estate. We will also present documentation proving misuse of company funds, emotional manipulation within the marriage, and multiple violations of fiduciary duty." The judge opened the folder. Her brows lifted. She didn't say wow, but the air shifted. She read the line that mattered most. All properties and business assets revert to Ava Thompson in the event of abuse or betrayal. Signed, dated, witnessed, March 10th, 2012. 10 years ago. Back when Marcus thought contracts were just romantic gestures, then it was my turn. I rose, walked slowly, deliberately, looked the judge straight in the eye and spoke. "Your Honor, I didn't come here to be vindictive. I came here because I was silenced in my own home, in my own company, and in my own marriage. I came here because this man not only took money from our business to fund hotel rooms for other women, he then told the world I was crazy. I have proof of every transaction, every forged signature, every voice note where he bragged about deceiving investors and deceiving me." I turned to Marcus, and for the first time in years he looked small. His lawyer stood. Tried to argue that Marcus was emotionally manipulated, that I had used legal trickery to trap him. The judge held up her hand. "Mr. Whitmore, did you or did you not sign this contract?" Marcus stammered. I didn't read it." The judge raised an eyebrow. "That's not the court's responsibility. It's yours." Then she flipped through the folder again. "I see no evidence of any direct financial input from Mr. Whitmore during the business formation stage. I do see extensive evidence of spending that had nothing to do with operations, watches, travel, wire transfers to unrelated individuals." Grace leaned forward. "Those individuals are former romantic partners. We have statements from them." The judge didn't even blink. "This court finds in favor of the petitioner." Bang! The gavel came down. All business assets, properties, and financial holdings are to be transferred to Ms. Ava Thompson, effective immediately. Mr. Whitmore is to vacate all premises within 72 hours, relinquish all company access, and refrain from contacting the petitioner outside legal counsel. Motion for full ownership. Granted. Marcus didn't move. Not right away. Then he turned to me and whispered, "You'll regret this." I didn't reply, because I had already regretted enough. Regretted trusting him. Regretted believing his "I got this babe" speeches. Regretted shrinking so he could shine. This was restoration. Outside the courtroom, the air was different. Jasmine was waiting for me. Vanessa too. They didn't cheer. They just nodded. Because they knew what this moment was. Not a celebration. A reckoning. That evening, I walked into the house, my house, and turned on the lights. No yelling. No perfume that wasn't mine. No keys slamming on countertops. Just peace. And one voice message from Grace. "Congratulations, Ava.
He lost everything. You got your life back, and more importantly, he knows it. For 3 days after the court ruling, Marcus disappeared from my radar. No calls. No pounding on my gate, no desperate texts about talking like adults. Just silence. I thought maybe he finally got it, that the gavel was loud enough, that the echo of his loss would be enough to shut him up. But men like Marcus don't go quiet. They go public. I was at my office when Claramie assistant burst through the door. She wasn't panicked. She was furious. "Ma'am," he posted a video. She handed me her phone, YouTube. Title in all caps. My side of the story. How she lied, stole everything, and left me with nothing. Over 200,000 views. And rising. I pressed play. There he was, Marcus Whitmore, sitting in a dimly lit room, hoodie on, eyes glassy. There was sad piano music playing behind his words. I gave her everything, my loyalty, my love. Years of my life. And in return, she took my company. My house, my car. I'm sleeping on my friend's couch right now. I'm not perfect. I made mistakes. But she used the courts to destroy me. He sniffled, actually sniffled. I nearly laughed. The comments? A mix of pity and confusion. No man deserves this. She sounds controlling. He's broken. She must be heartless. Where's her side of the story? I didn't reply, didn't log in, didn't post a statement, because I already told my story in court, and unlike him, I had the receipts. But the lies didn't stop with YouTube. He started selling fake stories to gossip blogs. One claimed I'd used voodoo to manipulate the judge. Another hinted I had an affair with our former accountant. One post even said I fabricated the abuse. It was all absurd. But viral? Because the internet doesn't need truth. It just needs engagement. Still, I remained silent. Let him scream into the void. Let the algorithm give him his 15 minutes. Because when the truth finally drops, it always hits harder. I had cameras installed. Motion sensors, legal firewalls. I wasn't scared. I was ready. And then, he made the biggest mistake of all. Thursday, 2:13 a.m. My phone buzzed with an alert. Motion detected. Backyard gate. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and pulled up the live security feed. There he was. Marcus, wearing black, a GoPro strapped to his chest, mumbling into his mic. Live streaming. Just watch. She's going to come out yelling. She's the villain. I'm just here for what's mine. I called 911. 911? What's your emergency? My ex-husband is trying to break into my home. He's violating a restraining order, and he's filming it live. 10 minutes later, blue and red lights lit up my street. Officers drew weapons, pulled Marcus down on the lawn. He kept shouting, "I'm the victim! She froze my life! She's evil!" They cuffed him on the spot. The live stream kept rolling until an officer shut off the camera, and just like that, his final act of revenge became evidence. The next day, headlines exploded. Ex-husband caught breaking into home on live stream claims he's the victim. From CEO to criminal, Marcus Whitmore's viral downfall. She stayed silent until the cameras told the truth. I didn't give interviews, didn't pose for magazines, but I did post one sentence to my Instagram story. When you live in truth, you don't need a script. Meanwhile, Marcus was charged with violation of a protective order, attempted burglary, intent to harass, obstruction of justice. He was released on bail, but the damage wasn't mine. It was his. The blogs that once sympathized, now they turned. He kicked her in public, stole from her, and still played victim. This is narcissism, not heartbreak. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Even Jasmine and Vanessa posted support. Vanessa wrote, "He lied to all of us, and now he's unraveling.
in HD.
People often ask why I never clapped back publicly, why I let him post, lie, smear me. Here's the truth. You don't argue with someone mid-collapse.
You step aside and let gravity do the work. And Marcus? He was falling fast. That night, I poured a glass of wine, curled up in my favorite chair, and watched the city lights flicker outside my window. No GoPros, no broken promises, just peace. And proof. It had been 4 days since the attempted break-in. The house was quiet, not empty, just whole, like it was finally mine again. The wine glasses no longer trembled in the cupboard from late-night door slams. The hallway didn't echo with angry footsteps, no GoPro, no yelling through the intercom, just the hum of peace. I thought the war was over. But trauma has a way of ringing your doorbell long after the fight ends. Tuesday morning, 8:11 a.m. I opened the front door expecting a package. Instead, I found Vanessa Blake, standing on my porch, hoodie pulled over her head, eyes red, arms crossed over her chest like a child bracing for impact. I didn't speak. I just stepped aside. "I'm not here to start anything," she said softly. "I just need 5 minutes." We sat at the kitchen table. She sipped the tea I handed her, hands trembling slightly. Then she whispered it. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed didn't last long, because the second part came quickly. "It's Marcus's, but I don't want anything from him. That's why I'm here." I didn't judge her, didn't sigh, didn't scoff, because I knew what it was like to believe Marcus when he was sweet, when he was charming, when he made you feel seen before he made you feel small. So I just nodded. "Okay, what do you need to tell me?" She pulled out her phone. "He called me 2 days ago, said he was done playing nice, said if the courts took everything, he'd make sure you didn't get to enjoy it." My chest tightened. He said, and I quote, "She wants war. I'll bring it to her front door again, this time with a camera and a witness. All I need is to bait her into hitting me once, just once. Then I flip the story." I closed my eyes, took a long breath, because even behind bars, even in disgrace, Marcus still wanted to control the narrative. Vanessa played me a recording. Marcus's voice, grainy but unmistakably his. "I'll show up crying, pregnant ex beside me, make her look crazy. She'll lose her mind. All women like her eventually do." He laughed. Vanessa's eyes welled. "He thinks I'm going to help him, but I'm done." I believed her, because there was no sparkle in her voice, no drama, just fatigue, and a quiet rage that only women who've been used know how to carry. That night, I called Grace. Updated the restraining order, expanded the legal documentation to include third-party manipulation and harassment threats. We added Vanessa's testimony and the audio clip. And then Grace said something that stuck with me. "Ava, this isn't about revenge anymore. This is about containment. You're not punishing him. You're protecting yourself from someone who refuses to lose with dignity." I hired full-time private security. Officer Blake, retired sheriff, recommended by Grace, took night shift. He didn't talk much, but he never blinked when I handed him the file. I've seen men like him. It's not about love. It's about control. Good call bringing me in. A few days later, Jasmine called. She had been following the Marcus saga quietly, cheering from afar. "I'm proud of you," she said, "and if he tries anything, I'll testify too." I have texts, DMs, a video he sent bragging about faking an injury to ruin someone. I smiled. "We're building a library at this point." Jasmine laughed. "Yeah, except every page is a red flag." There's a strange kind of power that comes from women no longer apologizing for each other, from realizing we weren't rivals. We were witnesses to each other's hurt, to his lies, to our recovery. 2 weeks later, Vanessa messaged again. "I've decided to keep the baby. But I'm giving him my name, not Marcus's. I replied, then you've already won. I didn't post about it, didn't write a blog, didn't share a single detail online, because healing doesn't always need a headline. Sometimes it just needs a moment at your own kitchen table, where a woman who once wore your perfume without asking sits across from you, crying for forgiveness and warning you of danger in the same breath. And that's when I realized I was no longer the woman waiting for the next blow. I was the woman building walls made of witness statements, evidence, and courage. Marcus could rage. He could plot. He could cry on live streams, but he would never again catch me off guard. The courthouse was quiet that day. Almost too quiet. No reporters, no microphones, no viral clips, just a short hearing, a stern-faced judge, and a final order. Permanent restraining order granted. Mr. Marcus Whitmore is hereby prohibited from all contact with Ms. Ava Thompson direct or indirect for the rest of his natural life. I didn't cry. Didn't smirk. Didn't even look his way. Because Marcus wasn't the storm anymore. He was just weather I had already survived. When we stepped out, the sun was high. I felt it warming my skin like an old friend. Clara was waiting by the car, sunglasses on, jaw clenched. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. He's not mine to carry anymore. In the weeks that followed, Marcus tried once more to bait me. He sold another story to a clickbait blog. She's not who you think. Inside the dark past of Ava Thompson. It barely got traction. Because after months of lies, the public had moved on. And more importantly, so had I. I didn't respond. Didn't sue for defamation. Didn't engage. Why? Because I was no longer in the ring. I had stepped out, washed the blood from my knuckles, and built a life that no longer required fists. I started volunteering at a shelter for women and children. Once a week, I led sessions called Red Flags Aren't Decorations. The first time I told my story, one woman in the back whispered through tears, "You just described my husband." Word for word. She didn't ask for advice. She just needed someone to say, "You're not crazy. You're not alone. And it's not your fault." Vanessa had her baby. A boy healthy, wide-eyed, with a cry louder than justice. She named him Elijah. "Not after anyone," she said. "Just a strong name for a kid who won't inherit anyone's shame." We sent each other Christmas cards. No friendship bracelet stuff, just mutual respect from two women who refused to sink. Jasmine moved to Atlanta, started her own tech firm. Every few months, she'd send me screenshots of broy DMs from men who tried to manipulate her. She always replied with the same phrase, "I survived, Marcus. You're not even a level 1 mini-boss." We laughed. Because humor, we learned, was sometimes the final stage of healing. As for me, I bought a small house upstate, nothing flashy. White porch, quiet backyard, wind chimes, a garden full of lavender and fireflies, no alarms, no cameras, just peace. Sometimes people ask, would you ever go public? Write a book? Start a podcast? Take him down fully? And I always answer the same. I don't need to ruin him. He's already ruined himself. My job was never revenge, it was recovery. Because here's the truth, no one puts on greeting cards. Not every monster hides under your bed. Some bring you coffee and call you beautiful. Not every survivor wears scars. Some wear silence, dignity, grit in their spine, and not every victory is loud. Some victories look like lavender blooming in a place you used to cry. 1 year later, I found an old photo of me and Marcus, us at some gala, his hand on my hip. My smile frozen wide but hollow. I almost tossed it, but instead, I framed it, not as a keepsake, as a reminder. Because that photo, that woman, she deserved more than survival. She deserved freedom. And now, she has it. Life lesson from Ava's story, choosing peace over revenge. Ava's journey reminds us that true strength
doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's the quiet decision to walk away from chaos and choose healing instead of hatred. In a world that often glorifies revenge, her story teaches us that justice can be quiet, dignified, and rooted in truth, not spectacle. For many older Americans who've lived through betrayal, loss, or abuse, Ava's story may feel deeply familiar. But her greatest triumph wasn't the courtroom victory, it was reclaiming her voice, her peace, and her power. She didn't destroy her abuser. She simply stopped letting him control the narrative. This reminds us, we don't need to win every fight. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is let go, heal, and build a life that speaks for itself. Dignity doesn't shout, it stands tall. And healing isn't weakness, it's wisdom earned. In the end, Ava didn't need revenge. She needed freedom. And that, she found on her own terms. It's never too late to start over, and you don't need to be loud to be powerful.